Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Niall Lihst and I'm your host for this video that will be the first in a series of videos I like to call Feats of Strength. Feats of Strength will be a YouTube series where I will go through each major character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and go through all their greatest feats of strength in the MCU. This will be a long series considering that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has an entire pantheon of formidable fighters. I will be commenting on moments that stand out to me, so let me know down in the comments if I've missed any notable scenes. There will be no other point of reference than the movies, which means that any TV shows, comic books, or additional media will not be referenced. Now keep in mind that these stats will not be limited to just strength and will include both physical and mental attributes such as dexterity, intelligence, charisma, and or whatever I feel like needs to be mentioned. Once we go through all their feats, I will then list what I consider to be their greatest or most impressive feat of strength, then rank them as a fighter on my tier list. This list will range from F to S, with F being the worst fighter and S being the top of the top. You do not want to be caught in an alleyway with this fighter. With all the rules and mumbo jumbo out of the way, let's get started. I'm Niall Lihst, and this is Feats of Strength. Now what better way to start off this series than with the Marvel Cinematic Universe's greatest, scariest, and most popular supervillain, Thanos, the Mad Titan himself, the one whose actions forced the Avengers to action and orchestrated most of the events for phases 1, 2, and 3 by conquering planets on his quest to acquire the powerful Infinity Stones. Now there are many reasons why I chose Thanos to be the first fighter to be analyzed in this series, with one of them being that he is one of my favorite characters in the MCU, and he clocks in at just a little over an hour of total screen time in the franchise, which I thought would make it easier to comb through all his feats, but man, was I sorely mistaken. This warrior manages to pull off several impressive feats of strength that I may have trouble listing down. This absolute unit weighs in at 8 foot 2 inches and about 1,000 pounds. This monster is terrifying. If we were just going off of looks, then this intimidating appearance already ranks Thanos pretty high. But we're not here to talk about appearances though. We're here to see how Thanos stacks up against the competition. Let's talk about his physical attributes. So for strength, we're just talking about his base strength with no enhances or buffs. This obviously includes the world's biggest buff, the Infinity Gauntlet, which will have its own section. Now as for how strong Thanos is normally, there's no better example to reference other than Hulk versus Thanos. Literally his first ever feat of strength presented in the MCU, if you don't count him carrying Thor of course, since I don't find that too impressive. Now, if we consider that Hulk was not holding back, and we have reason to believe this since Hulk was trying to save his friends, then that means Thanos' base strength outclasses Angry Hulk. Holy crap. Just think about that for a second. Thanos, with no buffs, is stronger than the Hulk at his strongest. That is insane. And this is further supported by Ebony Maw saying, "Let him have his fun." The Incredible Hulk is easily in the top 5 strongest Avengers, which means Thanos outranks most of our heroes by default. He forces the Hulk's grip off with little to no effort to the Hulk's surprise, then proceeds to beat him down in the most disrespectful way possible. He lifts Hulk's whole heavy body as if to display how insignificant their fight was, then throws him down like trash. Easy clap. Now tossing Hulk is not the only display of strength. There are multiple examples where Thanos wrecks our heroes with his bare hands. The most consistent examples happen on the fight on Titan, where half the Guardians of the Galaxy and half the Avengers team up to take the gauntlet away from Thanos. Now this fight scene is impressive for all parties involved, and we'll get to each major player in their own video, but right now we are focusing on the Purple Giant. Here Thanos punches Drax so hard that his body is launched and breaks stone. Then Thanos kicks Doctor Strange so hard that the wizard has to activate his magic to catch himself. They're almost like flies that Thanos swats away, especially when he grabs Spider-Man, proceeds to slam him into the ground, then throws him at Doctor Strange, almost incapacitating both of them. Now the next physical attribute I want to talk about is endurance. Now endurance is a bit of an arbitrary and interchangeable term with strength, but these scenes I'll be talking about fit more in the endurance category in my opinion. So you may see some examples placed here and think they might as well be the same as the previous physical attribute, and that's completely fine. But what am I referring to when I say endurance, you ask? Good question. When I say endurance, I mean the literal dictionary definition, which reads as the fact or power of enduring an unpleasant or difficult process or situation without giving way, which roughly translates to how much can this crazy bastard take? The answer? A whole lot. Let's start off with the first 10 minutes in the film, where Thanos palms the Tesseract with his bare hands, then crushes it with no sign of pain or burning of his hand. Characters have been struggling to just handle this block of blue, and this guy is just holding it with no care in the world. But what else can he take? Let's fast forward again to the infamous battle in Titan, where Thanos manages to endure everything thrown at him. Drax's blade and Doctor Strange's sword of eldritch magic leave no cuts or impression on the body. Go-Go Gadget's toys leave no mark on him either. What about those two massive objects flying at him at high speeds, such as the tower that Tony pushes, or Nebula's incoming ship? Nothing. There's almost no visible marks or scars on Thanos. All the characters' efforts barely scratch him. They even attempt to dogpile him. The combined efforts of Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Drax try to hold him back while Mantis delivers a psychic attack to incapacitate him. And even then, he's able to hold his own, as even the characters admit that they are struggling to keep him incapacitated. That's basically overpowered if a pre-planned team attack is barely able to hold one person down. It gets even more embarrassing during the Iron Man vs. Thanos fight. Look here, Tony's latest suit, the Mark 50 armor, which should have the most complex and strongest upgrades up to this point, nanotechnology that seems to be able to listen and actualize all of Tony's thoughts with little to no delay or complication, a suit that should theoretically be able to adapt and respond accordingly to every potential threat. And it wasn't enough. Let that sink in. The world's strongest tech armor, built off-screen, was not enough for one fighter. Thanos manages to brush off every single attack that Tony fires, which includes resisting mini-missiles, taking 4 battering rams with jet boost, breaking the gauntlet spring, and snapping off the Mark 50 blade. And to top it off, the only victory Tony gets is a drop of blood, and then a deep stab. Thanos even sits the MCU's main character down and talks to him like a child. This disrespect alone is enough to kill. But all these examples still do not compare to Thanos' greatest feat of endurance, which is holding the power of all Infinity Stones. Twice. One stone was enough to nearly destroy the Guardians of the Galaxy, but this monster was able to take the full force of the universe. Snapping almost killed the Hulk, and it actually killed Iron Man. Rest in peace. Now on to the next physical attribute. Weapon proficiency. The weapons in question that Thanos has shown a mastery level in are the Infinity Gauntlet and the Helicopter Blade. Now, the Infinity Gauntlet is a special situation since it's a do-anything-you-want glove, but I'm here to make a case for it. According to E-Tree, he and his dwarven brothers forged the Infinity Gauntlet at Thanos' request. This gauntlet is comprised of Uru metal, the same metal used for Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. It was made specifically for the sole purpose of harnessing the power of the stones. The mere concept of this weapon has OP written all over it, but just because it is does not mean you could have used it the same way Thanos has in the films. Other than power beams or teleportation, Thanos has shown an incredible degree of creativity and strategic thinking whenever fighting with the glove. For example, he altered Mantis and Drax's bodies, simulated the reality of his former home as if it had never changed, transformed inorganic material into flying bat creatures, funneled flames into a beam, used a number of stones at the same time to rupture the surface of a moon, then sent its rubble to Titan like a meteoric attack, phased the Hulkbuster suit through rocks, and used the right moves to fight Doctor Strange's magic. In fact, Doctor Strange vs. Thanos is what I consider to be the most impressive and best use of the Infinity Gauntlet. Think about it. Thanos has been fighting for hundreds of years, but there's no guarantee or proof that he's ever encountered magic in his life, especially in a battle. It was short, but only because Thanos was able to match Doctor Strange blow for blow. He had to think on the spot and use the gauntlet to the best of his abilities, then eventually overpowers Doctor Strange. Next weapon is the Helicopter Blade. I believe that Thanos' use of the helicopter sword is the best example of his weapon proficiency. This is due to the fact of how flawed and unusable the sword is. If you want an in-depth explanation, then go watch Shadowversity's video on it. It's pretty good. But the main gist is basically this, that the blade is too dangerous to use. Just look at this thing. Now, I know that you and every other person in the theater was thinking the same thing whenever we saw this. What the hell is he holding? And how the hell does he intend to use it? Well, for starters, there's barely any room on the hilt to hold and swing for combat. If you lose any more space, then you risk cutting yourself. The blades are so long and large that if you don't swing correctly, then you can also risk cutting yourself again. But if you've seen the film, then you know that none of these flaws seem to slow down the Mad Titan at all. In fact, he is surprisingly agile and precise while using the weapon. Despite all these problems, he's still able to block incoming fire and strike at the right moments. And I think him just using the sword normally is an impressive feat in of itself. Next thing on our list is mental attributes.
Time travel!
This section is a little different and more scatterbrained, in that it's just going to include everything that I didn't believe would belong as a physical attribute, since you can't necessarily quantify it. They're a little more on the lines of personality traits and then some. Thanos possesses all the qualities considered integral to be a great leader, but he unfortunately uses it for evil reasons. He believes that his goal of wiping out exactly 50% of the universe's population is for the greater good, and that all who oppose him simply do not understand the bigger picture of his plan. He clearly has intelligence and charisma, considering that he raised an entire army and the Black Order, his adopted children who are willing to fight and die in the name of Thanos. Thanos' own reputation precedes him, as Korath the Pursuer has said that Thanos is the most powerful being in the universe. Thanos has gone around the universe conquering planet to planet and decimating half of their populations. He has a drive for results and will literally not stop until he's accomplished the goals he set out. Now, I want to address two quotes that have been memed to death, but stand out to me as a true testament to Thanos as a force of nature. The two quotes in question: "Fine, I'll do it myself" by Thanos at the end of Avengers Age of Ultron, and an exchange from Avengers Infinity War, where Doctor Strange says, "I look forward in time, I saw 14,605 futures," to which Tony asks, "And how many of those do we win?" Doctor Strange answers, "1. So let's talk about the first one. "Fine, I'll do it myself." Why do I consider this a feat? Well, the main reason is because he followed through. Thanos initially sent Ronan the Accuser, Loki, and who knows who else over time to retrieve the stones for him. Once everyone failed, he got tired of waiting and decided to literally take matter into his own hands. And in doing so, Thanos was able to retrieve all 6 Infinity Stones, his most sought after and desired minerals, in less than 48 hours. This man was able to accomplish what villains have tried for over 20 films in less than 2 days. Thanos clearly does not play around. As for the second quote, the exchange between Doctor Strange and Tony Stark discussing their options. Doctor Strange basically said that the heroes have a less than 0.0000000% chance of defeating Thanos. As we mentioned before, even with the combined efforts of the Avengers and Guardians, specific conditions had to be met to the letter to even attempt to barely hold Thanos. Like I said before, a force of nature. With all that being said, let's move on to the main event, the moment you've been waiting for. What is Thanos' most impressive feat of strength in the MCU? Now, if you've been paying attention and have watched all the films, then you know that there's one major fight that I purposely did not mention. I believe that this fight in of itself is his most impressive feat to date. That fight, ladies and gentlemen, is the Trinity versus Thanos, or Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor versus Thanos. Let me set the tone and stakes of this fight so you have a better idea as to why I chose this one. Thanos snaps his fingers and wipes out half the population. Everyone's friends and families have inexplicably been dusted before your eyes. Everyone's morale is down and they're losing hope. The Avengers think they found a way to solve their problems when they locate Thanos and decide to confront him and force him to reverse the snap. Unfortunately, the stones have been destroyed, but they still choose to kill Thanos. 5 years pass, and it seems like everyone's gone on to do whatever they can to cope with their devastation. Some seek counseling, some found family, and some bury their misery in alcohol. Eventually, hope does come along in the form of Paul Rudd in an ugly van. They get the remainder of the team back together to reverse the tragedy that destroyed their lives on a dangerous mission that cannot fail. The team gets what they need, but loses someone along the way. Everything they've been working towards can now be accomplished with a single snap. Their friend volunteers and nearly loses his life. The heroes did it. But unfortunately, they brought back the very monster who caused this nightmare. The heroes are now hyper-focused because now they can confront this monster and do what's right by eliminating him once and for all in this final fight for the universe. Now, why did I go on that little monologue describing the build-up? Because I want to emphasize what is going through each of the Trinity's minds, all their pent-up rage and hate towards this purple individual. Their lives were robbed and they want to take it back. Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor are each at the cusp of their character arcs and have reached the peak of their strength at this point. Cap has trained for decades, Thor now wields both Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, and Iron Man is equipped with his latest suit, the Mark 85. But, unfortunately, none of that matters as Thanos still beats them. This is the exact reason why this fight is Thanos' most impressive feat. Go ahead and rewatch the scene, and you'll see why I chose this. As the Trinity preps themselves and approaches Thanos, what does Thanos do? He literally just sits and waits for them. He gives them as much time as they want to surround him. His body language is basically saying, go ahead and take all the time you want. Charge your weapons, ready your stance, and make sure you fight me as hard as you can, because I will still be able to take you all on at once. As the fight starts, he clearly holds his own against all their attacks and seems focused on dividing them to make it easier. This is where that strategic, on-the-spot thinking comes in. He even manages to knock out Iron Man pretty early into the fight. One down. Thor tries to 1v1 him, but fails, as Thanos makes a really smart play where he knocks Stormbreaker out of Thor's grip, then proceeds to pummel him. Now here's a moment that I believe is worth mentioning that I don't see enough people talking about. Thor tries to summon Stormbreaker to either stab Thanos or grab it. As it's flying towards him, Thanos sees this as an opportunity to grab it, and while using the momentum, stab Thor in the chest. I would never think of this in a million years, considering that if I saw a weapon flying towards me, then I would jump the hell out of the way. Another really smart play. Thanos knocks Thor out. 2 down. Finally, Thor faces Cap with the hammer. Cap almost gets the upper hand, but eventually Thanos knows the hammer is trouble, so he overpowers Cap, then smacks the hammer out of his hand. Once the deed is done, Thanos incapacitates Cap right after he tears up Captain America's vibranium shield, one of the most indestructible weapons in the MCU. The Trinity completely taken out, they didn't stand a chance against the Mad Titan. Now, let's get on with the ranking. With all that's been said, and if we tally up all of Thanos' best attributes as a fighter, I'm proud to certify Thanos, the Mad Titan, as an S-tier fighter. Congratulations, Thanos. You are indeed one of the best fighters in the MCU. Wow, that was a lot more than I expected, but it's fine since we have more characters to go through in the MCU. Please let me know down in the comments if there are any moments or feats that stood out to you that I missed. I want to know your thoughts on what you think is Thanos' most impressive feat. Also tell us which character we should do a video on next. Whoever gets the most upvotes may be the next choice. If you like what you see, then please share, click the like button, and subscribe, because it really does help the channel out. Thanks for watching. I'm Niall Lihst, and I'll catch you on the flip side.